felt like I was going through some type of transformation because I've never done anything this hard before. And looking back, it's like, I can't believe I did that. And it makes me so proud that I pulled it off. Right before starting the coding bootcamp, I would say I was just studying, because we had to do pre-course, and they tell you have what, 80-ish to 120 hours or so to complete it. I needed way more time. I had a relatively small house with lots of people living in it, so I would just go to my walk-in closet and just code there at night when my son was 2 years old, and I would just literally go in the walk-in closet, just be coding till like 1 or 2 in the morning. So like I wish I could say I was chillaxing, relaxing, like mentally, emotionally preparing for the coding bootcamp, but it was really like off to the races, trying to finish pre-course before first day. But before I even decided to do the coding bootcamp, where I was just thinking of like starting to study in order to pass a technical assessment, that whole part looked like I decided to I was a stay-at-home mom, and in order for me to get the time to study JavaScript, I put my son in daycare and would just go to a coffee shop nearby, and I'd spend 5 hours, 5 days a week, every single day studying JavaScript, and that was my routine for months until I passed the technical assessment. So pass the technical assessment, boom, like pre-course. So that was my life.
So I did the bootcamp December of last year, and I started preparing in August. That was not enough time. I don't recommend that to anybody. I really punished myself over that period, like 8-hour day studying sessions. I did the premium prep course. I really threw myself into it. The only time I really didn't code, I was tutoring or doing my little bit of socialization. Pre-COVID, we could actually hang out.
As I mentioned earlier, I had that said 2-year-old son, and being a stay-at-home mom, I was very, very attached to him at the hip. The other thing to the story was I was in Las Vegas, and there was no Hack Reactor in Las Vegas, and at that time, I really, really wanted to do the in-person program. So I decided that I was gonna move to Austin for the Hack Reactor program there and bring my 2-year-old and bring my mother-in-law with me so that she can watch him after daycare. And it sounds like a brilliant idea in theory, but it wasn't. Okay, so then the program started, and it worked out fine for like the first couple of weeks. But what I found out when I got into like week 2, 3, 4, it was definitely taking a toll on my son at that time, because I would come home at like 8:30 p.m. and he wanted my attention, but I needed to still study. And so it created this weird conflict of, I want to be a good mom and give him time, but how am I ever going to study? And what was really, really hard for me was I knew I was falling behind in the program, and I ended up making a really tough decision to move my son and my mother-in-law back to Las Vegas, hired a full-time nanny for them in Vegas, and really focused on the program, because honestly, my life, my routine was just, you go to Hack Reactor, get there at 9, end at 8, but you end up staying there till 10 or 11 p.m. To finish up your sprint. Some people were morning people, and I'd see people there at like 7 a.m. I was not an early riser. I'm a night person. So yeah, that was my routine. Get up, 7 a.m., get to class by 9, there till 11 p.m., come home, pass out. Sundays, you're still studying, at least for 3-4 hours. So that's all that it was, like study, sleep, laundry, eat, somehow remember to eat sometime. That was your life. But you know what? It was good. I felt like I was going through some type of transformation because I've never done anything this hard before. And looking back, it's like, I can't believe I did that. And it makes me so proud that I pulled it off. But it was intense.
It's definitely intense. Like I just like looking back at it, I'm like, I kind of miss it though. Like it was super intense, but I do miss like just having that structure. I think like when I went through it, the first week was the hardest because you have to get used to the schedule. And then once you know the schedule, you can plan in advance for it. When I started the program, a piece of advice that somebody gave me was to tell my family and my friends that I was going MIA for like 3 months. They told me to just like set that expectation at the very beginning so that if they invited me to something and I said no, like they knew why.
I will say that there's also a very big social component, which I was not thinking about because all I was thinking, oh, I'm just going to go to this boot camp and just throw myself to this and that will be my only life. So it was very surprising to me that it was also very social time for me. Every Saturday evening, or almost every Saturday evening around 6 p.m., the cohort, the whole entire cohort, or most of the cohort would do something fun. I mean, now I know a lot of the cohorts do things online. They do like online games or just do happy hours online. But when I did it, I was in person. So we would just go bar hopping. We'd play odd games. It was a ton of fun. And I think you needed that relief in order to grind again the next day. So you become super, super close to your cohort, like insanely close. And I've noticed that both for in-person and remote, that it just naturally happens, which was surprising. I was not expecting that to happen. And I think the reason why you spend so much time with your cohort socially is because you're all going through the same thing and you're able to talk to each other and share in each other's wins and share in each other's like grief, like, oh, I'm behind this sprint. And there was a lot of camaraderie, like people would help each other. If someone figured something out, people would always stay longer with you to get you caught up. And so there just wasn't really a lot of time and space emotionally to really want to even connect with other people because you were just so focused on doing a good job in the program.
I feel like I grew so much too from the beginning to the end. And I feel like at the beginning, you know, like I was pretty bad at like practicing self-care. Like I, very similar to James, like did not plan at all. Like I just kind of jumped into it, like showed up day one. And I was eating like potato chips, like whatever I can like find in the vending machines. And then I got to a point where I was wondering why I was so tired, like all the time, right? And I had a week break because I also did the program in December. So I had a week holiday break and I went and bought like a NutriBullet and started like making like little bags of like fruit and scheduling workouts. And then I noticed like how much better I felt. So I kind of think about the program for me, it was like separated into two parts. It was like when I was not taking care of myself and when I was.
So I'm not a routine person. I still to this day, it's impossible for me to stick to a routine. And at that time, I ate a bagel every morning, ate like the cheap $2 ramen noodles every afternoon, and probably again around 8 p.m. Like I ate horribly, but I just didn't have the emotional, mental space to think about food. However, a game changer for me, and I highly recommend this to everyone, is I did two things. Number one is I found 2 to 3 quotes that really, really resonated with me and put them as notes in my iPhone. And every time I was stuck on a sprint or on a really hard part, instead of panicking that imposter syndrome was kicking in, like, oh, I'm just not good enough, I can't understand this, I would take a moment, I would go for a walk outside, just take a break, and I'd read these quotes to myself.
I would like to just briefly detail what I was like in the first half of the immersive versus the second. First half, I was not sleeping properly. We were above a Torchy's Tacos here in Austin. That's a taco shop. I went frequently. Not a good brain food. And yeah, it was really just and I wasn't prepared. So it was a combination of a lack of sleep, lack of preparation, and poor diet. Just really was a beast in me that made me, I developed worse insomnia than I'd ever had. I had eczema on my hands. First time I'd ever gotten that. And then multiple times I sweat through my clothes during the day because I was so nervous that people would catch me as a fraud. Long story short, I got through that period. And one of the things that helped that was getting like a real schedule, like sleeping at the same time every night, eating better. And kind of like Navira, I also really like quotes and have like uplifting moments. I was reading a book. It's a high fantasy book by Brandon Sanderson called Oathbringer during a big part of the immersive. And there's a quote in that book that says, what's the most important step a man can take? It's the next step, always the next one. I love that quote, always cheers me up. And I actually keep this above my workstation. It's Walt Whitman, be curious, never judgmental. Less uplifting, but just relevant. I would go back and watch things like that and just try and keep myself not fixating on the negatives. I realized pretty early on that or at least my imposter syndrome was based fully on like not being able to move on from a day's events. Like I wouldn't finish a sprint, which are the activities we do after a lesson, and it would just bother me because it's just nothing that never happened to me before in my entire life where I would not finish the homework or something, which is what it felt like. But like after I got a handle on all of that, it just totally changed and became so much easier and more straightforward. It's like it clicked.
I knew it was going to be a roller coaster, but I didn't anticipate like how volatile it is. Like you could go up and down so many times during one day that you really need to have a system to keep your spirit up.
I spent a lot of times talking with the more senior people in the cohort or like the TAs to pull me through, because they were also, not only do they help you get unstuck on coding challenges, they're also kind of your champions and your coaches, like emotional coaches, and they're the ones who really pick you up when you're having a bad day because they were just there a few weeks ago. And I cannot overemphasize how it was the TAs who actually helped me a lot with my imposter syndrome.
During imposter syndrome moments, I started researching it. So I actually read a book on imposter syndrome, or actually, let me rephrase that. I listened to a book because I did not have time to read. I listened to an audiobook on my way to the program, and then on my way home. And I felt like doing research just kind of normalized that whole process. And I was more self-aware of when that imposter syndrome was sneaking in, and I was better able to point it out.
What really helped me was the concept of reframing. I needed to reframe how I was looking at myself going through the DSI in order to feel confident in myself again. And how I did that was I wrote down everything that I finished during the course. And I counted that as a huge achievement because they are, and they're really hard to do. As far as I'm concerned, they're big achievements. And that allowed me to recontextualize everything and really look at things in a different light than I had been before. It wasn't like, oh, I've done this long, strenuous thing and I'm tired all the time. It was instead, I did this long, strenuous thing and look at this huge list of stuff I did. And that really helped me amp myself up. I quit therapy halfway through because I was feeling so confident in myself compared to before. So I went from, eczema, sweating, no sleep, to actually confident.
Obviously, we all come here to become software engineers or data scientists. What I was not anticipating was the mental grit I would learn through this process and having that growth mindset. I don't think I really had a growth. I wanted to believe I had a growth mindset, but it really doesn't get tested until you're in the program. And there'll be days where you don't understand something and you question yourself, and you come out of it the other side and you learn to trust yourself. And I think that's the biggest thing I've noticed, the transformation in myself and the transformation I see time and time again in every single person, that a person comes in insecure and they come out mega confident in themselves, in that knowledge that they can conquer anything. And that mental toughness, I think, was really achieved through this program.